What's going on, guys? Sharpshot here. Hope you guys are having a great day so far. So today's video will be answering the question of, is Basekit Unbreakable a good change for DBD? For those of you guys that don't know what I'm talking about, in this 6.3.0 update, DBD announced that we're going to have something called Hope is Not Lost, where after a survivor has been in the dying state for 45 seconds or more, they can recover themselves up back to the injured state without any additional perks. So it's practically Basekit Unbreakable. And obviously at face value, this seems like an insane survivor buff and an insane killer nerf, but there's more to it than meets the eye. So for today's video, I'm going to go over 3 pros and 3 cons of Basekit Unbreakable coming to DBD. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to give my thoughts on whether I think it's good for the overall game or if it's bad. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right into the video. Starting off with the pros, the first one is that you won't be sitting in the dying state for 5 minutes in a trial anymore. When killers chose to do heavy slug strategies, it often meant that when the first survivor got down in the slug, they were down in the dying state for 5 or more minutes until either the killer finally went back to get them or they died from being in the dying state for too long. Regardless if you're a killer main or survivor main, anybody can tell that that is just boring for whoever is just sitting there doing nothing and not something that you want when you're playing DBD, because you already do nothing when you're sitting on hook. With Basekit Unbreakable, the maximum amount of time someone is sitting in the dying state is 45 seconds, so you won't be sitting on the ground for all eternity anymore. The second pro is that there won't be any hatch standoffs anymore. By hatch standoff, I mean those 2v1 situations where the killer wants to get the 4K and get all the survivors dead, but both of the survivors are hiding, wanting to get hatched, so it turns into this big hide and seek match where if the killer does find one survivor and downs them, they then try and go on another hide and seek to try and find the second survivor, leaving the first survivor in the dying state for super long. And it makes the trial super boring, and it's just not fun for both sides because the killer is just looking at every nook and cranny of the map, which is not fun to do, and the survivors are just sitting there hiding in lockers or whatever, which also isn't fun. You won't be getting those situations anymore because if the killer decides to do that, it'll turn into a ping pong match where if the killer downs one survivor and goes after the other survivor, the first survivor will just revive back up and it'll just go back and forth and they'll never be able to get both survivors down. Now what's going to happen in these situations is that the killer is going to have to kill the first survivor right away and then hope that they find the last survivor before the survivor finds hatch. It's just going to go a lot quicker, and it's also going to give the last survivor an actual opportunity for hatch and keep the trial action packed, which is what we want in DBD. The third pro is that you won't be in any more 2-minute trials. Gone are the days of killers going into a match, slugging everybody and then killing them and ending the match in the first 2 minutes, because there's slim to no chance that the killer is going to be able to down all 4 survivors within 45 seconds. Honestly, if you could do that, kudos to you, because that's insane. But these 2-minute trials aren't really beneficial for any side. For the killers and survivors, you barely get any blood points or pips for these matches, and for the survivors, it's just not a good time. Ending the match faster than you were in the loading screen. You could argue that this is really fun for the killers because it was a really fast trial and it was action packed for them, so this could be a con if you're a killer main, but for the overall state of the game, I think it's better if this isn't the case. Now moving on to the cons, the first one we have is that obviously the slugging strategy is gone. Like I said before, the chance of you slugging and actually getting multiple hooks out of it is slim to none. From the second you down a survivor, you have 45 seconds to catch a survivor, then go back to the other survivor that you downed first and then hook them. More than likely that won't take 45 seconds, it'll take a lot longer. Unless the 2 survivors are literally right next to each other and they're both injured, then you aren't really going to be able to slug at all. You won't be able to do crazy slug builds with knockout and third seal and go on a rampage and leave the survivors down for 5 minutes. In my opinion, for the killer mains, the slugging strategy was a very fun, high risk, high reward strategy. So in that sense, it's pretty sad that this strategy is gone. The second con is that Basekit Unbreakable is an indirect nerf to multiple killers with slugging powers. The biggest one being twins. You aren't going to be able to down and slug people with Victor across the map anymore. Other killers that are affected are Myers with his expose. You won't be able to catch all the survivors in one expose. Plague with her corrupt purge. You won't be able to go around and slug for the entire duration of her throw up. Oni with his blood fury. You won't be able to slug around for the entire duration of that. Trickster a little less, but with his main event, you won't be able to slug around for the entire duration of that. And finally, Ghostface. If you mark multiple survivors, you won't be able to catch both of them most likely. All of these killers honestly just cost got astray. They didn't really do anything and they just got nerfed, which kind of stinks because some of those killers like twins really rely on slugging. So it's gonna be pretty interesting to see how they actually play after this update. And finally, the third con is that it'll be harder for killers to avoid flashlight and pallet saves. This will be especially obvious when you go up against Swifts that are constantly trying to save each other, because you're kind of stuck in a situation where if you go out and slug and try and get the teammates away from the down survivor, it'll be past 45 seconds and that survivor is going to recover themselves. But if you stay and you pick up, then the survivors will obviously just try and flashlight or pallet stun you. It's really bad if a survivor goes under a pallet, because in that situation it's kind of a lose-lose, because if you pick up right away under the pallet, then the survivors will pallet stun you, and if you don't pick up, then the survivors are just going to recover themselves and then use the pallet to get away. These situations are going to be really tough to get out of, especially the pallet situation. So I could definitely see Swifts taking advantage of this in the future, which won't be fun. So yeah guys, those are the pros and cons of Basekit Unbreakable. So now I'm going to give my thoughts on whether I think it's good or bad for the overall state of DBD. You can obviously see that this is a survivor buff and a killer nerf, but overall I actually think this is a good change for DBD. The biggest point in this video was actually the first one that I made at the start of the video, that when you're playing a video game, you actually want to be playing and not just sitting there like twiddling your thumbs and just staring at the screen. As a game developer, you never want a player to not be playing your game. Being in long loading screens, being stuck on hook, and getting slugged for 5 minutes into the dying state, those are all not fun. You want to be constantly playing the game. So them eliminating one of those things in slugging was actually a good change, because it'll make survivors always be involved in the trial and not be sitting in the dying state for more than 45 seconds. It'll make the killers also be always involved, more so than if they were slugging, because they're gonna have to actually hook all 4 survivors, which will be a little bit more of a challenge than just slugging all of them and then going back for the hooks. So if you're an optimistic killer main, you can view this as a fun little challenge to try even harder to get 4Ks in the trial. This is good for the overall health of the game because it just keeps it fun and keeps everybody active in the trial. So this gets a thumbs up change for me. So yeah guys, those are my thoughts on Basekit Unbreakable. Comment down below if you think it's a good or bad change in DBD, but keep it civil. So yeah guys, that's for the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you're new. This has been Sharpshot, and I will see you guys in the next video.